All right. Thank you guys for joining us for this mini webinar. I am Hamada Zahawi. I am the founder and CEO of Right Track Admissions, and I want to give you guys a little bit of insight. I know this may be slightly kind of, I won't say doom and gloom, because it's kind of important to understand what to do when you get the decision from the school. And so that times that decision is not going to be towards the end of the cycle, but it could be in the middle of the cycle. And so you want to be prepared to know what you need to do to kind of put yourself in the best position possible. So let's kind of get through it. It's going to be a mini webinar. So I want to get through a lot of material pretty quickly, and then leave some Q&A if you guys have any for me. So just by way of background, as I said, I'm the founder and CEO of the Right Track Admissions. I went to UCLA for my undergrad, actually transferred from UC Santa Barbara to UCLA. I was an international student, was able to transfer and then graduate top of my class at UCLA in my field, and then was able to move to then pursue law, did my law degree at Berkeley, did my first master's in Cambridge in international relations and the second master's at Harvard, where that picture was taken. And I founded Right Track in 2008. That's why I feel like I am well equipped to be able to address this question, not only because I've been waitlisted before, but obviously I've been denied many times from different schools and accepted, obviously, at the schools that you see right there. Okay. So a lot of the material that we're going to be discussing and talking about today actually comes from the College Admissions Mastery course, which I created, and it is a kind of a work in progress. I'm constantly developing it and adding chapters to it and updating it. We're in the third edition right now, and this is really kind of a robust overview of everything you need to know about the admissions process, including some of the topics that we're going to be talking about today. All right. So first and foremost, let's kind of think through. I talked about this in one of our previous webinars, but let's think about what do the schools look at when they're evaluating the profile of an applicant. Well, I think the two most important things that the schools look at, especially now, is your GPA, as you can see by the size of the circle there, and your SAT, ACT, TOEFL. TOEFL less so, obviously, unless you're an international student. But the SAT, which at a time was extremely important. Then there was kind of a reaction against it. And then COVID, we thought was going to put the last nail in the coffin on it. And then post-COVID, it kind of came back. So it went from no need to optional to now required at quite a few schools. And because of AI and the ability of people to write their applications with AI, which is not allowed, they're trying to over-index on the SAT and your GPA as the two core requirements. And then they kind of delve into the other areas where you can see recommendation letters are very important. The interview is somewhat important there. Application materials are also very important. Obviously, the resume is extremely important in terms of the activities that you've done. And then to a lesser extent, your demonstrated interest in the school, which is still nonetheless important, and your personal profile, which is becoming less and less important because of DI and so forth, but still comes across in your application materials. And then I said there, the people that are the ones who review your application are the directors of admission and the admissions office staff, and then in some cases, the current students and alum. So this is kind of an overview of who is going to evaluate your candidacy as an applicant, which is, I think, extremely important to kind of consider and think about when putting your application together so that you know where you should be focusing. All right. Now you've got these four different outcomes that we'll talk about today: deferment, waitlist, denial, or acceptance. So deferment, which is different from waitlist, really is about saying, listen, we liked your application, but not enough to grant you a position, but we don't want to deny you outright. And you're fairly early in the process, so we're not going to necessarily waitlist you. We want to give you another shot at it. So we're going to essentially, in most cases, this is kind of what you have to think about, is we're going to move you from early decision or early action to regular decision. So you essentially get two bites at the apple, okay? And so that's really what deferment's really kind of all about, saying, listen, we're not going to decide on your application candidacy now. We're going to move it and kick the can down the road and give you another shot at it. So the process is they will reassess kind of your credentials and any new information before making a final decision when they've deferred you to the next round. And according to some studies, 10 to 15% of deferred applicants are ultimately accepted to their school. So I think the odds are better if you're deferred than if you're waitlisted. All right. Some things you need to think about in terms of action is this new information category I just spoke about in the process, which is if you have any updated transcripts, send those along. Any additional activities to your resume, add them in there, right? So kind of update your resume, update your transcripts. If you have the opportunity to add a letter of recommendation, do so, but check with the school's policy first because you don't want to be in a position where you get a letter of recommendation and they're like, we don't accept any further letters of recommendation. And then the last one, which actually also kind of overlaps with deferment, is the letter of continued interest, the LOKI. In that admissions mastery course or the mastery guide, that the course and then the guides informs the course. We talk about the LOKI, but just kind of suffice to say, it really is divided into two core parts. The first part says, here's what I've been doing since I applied, which in your case probably won't be that much because let's just say you applied early action or decision, you probably submitted your application around October, and you're going to find out that you got deferred probably around November, December max. So really, what are you going to add in 2 months? Not much, but if you have something to add in there, that's the first part of the LOKI. The second part of the LOKI is really kind of showing that thing that we talked about, which is that demonstrated interest right there. You really want to show them how much you're committed to the school. That's really where this kind of kicks in. All right. So that's the new information that we're kind of talking about here, that they will reassess your credentials, your new information before making a final decision in the deferment. So really, I don't think there is no deferment from early decision to early action to regular decision. It's always going to be, or it would be early action, early decision, punting that down to regular decision process. So October when you submit it, they kick the can down to regular decision. You'd get deferred then, you'd update them with new information, and then they would give you a final answer sometime around March, April, when people get their regular decision responses. But again, it's giving you 2 bites at the apple because you're going to be reviewed under the earlier part and then reviewed again under regular decision. So you kind of want to provide them with new information if you can to really give yourself the best shot of admission. The second opportunity really is waitlist. According to the National Association of Admissions Counselors, of college admissions counselors, colleges on average admit about 20% of students off the waitlist, while the figure is 7% at most selective institutions. So it's less, even though I said 15 to 20% here for deferment. Again, that's across the board. This one is 7% amongst the most selective. Look, let's use this year as an example. This year, I would imagine colleges were infinitely more likely to accept, okay, I say infinitely, I don't know, but I'm going to guess, I'm going to surmise that schools took people off the wait list a lot more, at a higher percentage than in previous years. Why? Because a lot of international students, for example, decided not to or could not gain a visa or decided to defer or decided to just not accept because they didn't know what the political climate's going to be. So they were opportunities. And so if you were waitlisted, there's a better chance than not, as an unintended consequence of what's been happening in the political climate, that you may have been taken off the waitlist. Okay, so don't underestimate the waitlist. You just never know what could happen, and you really want to give yourself the best shot of admission. So again, just by background, waitlist is neither being accepted or outright denied. You generally meet the admissions requirements, but the college has reached its capacity for accepted applicants. Okay, so they may have filled all the seats, or let's put it this way, excuse me, not filled all the seats. They may have given out all the acceptances that if everyone accepted it and they got the highest level of yield, they filled their capacity. Now they know that there is an attrition. There is inevitable that not everyone's going to accept. So there's going to be a space where when everybody kind of settles and the dust settles, that there will be spaces open. And that's where they go into the wait list. And likely, I can't guarantee it, that wait lists are obviously, which would make more sense, you're ranked within a wait list. So you may be like the top candidate within a wait list, the middle tier candidate, and the bottom tier candidate within a wait list. And And that's why I say, as a strategy, definitely do that letter of continued interest that we just spoke about. Submit an additional letter of recommendation, but again, check with the school if they could do that. I did when I was at law school and I got waitlisted. I went and got another letter of recommendation that I submitted, and the school allowed it. But for other schools, they didn't. Visit the campus. Again, that concept of a demonstrated interest. Visit the campus, speak with faculty, speak with admissions officers. Above all, I underline it there, stay proactive. Okay, because you want to update the school. Much like you would do for deferment, you do the same thing for the wait lists. And this just shows that you care. Now, bear in mind, some schools do not want you to do anything. They only want you to tell them whether you want to be kept on the wait list or not. Okay, so you don't necessarily want to rush and say, yeah, I'm going to do all this kind of stuff for the school. And the school's like, hey, time out. All we want you to do is write us an email that says, hey, I'm very much interested in Georgetown. Please leave me on the wait list. And that's all we want. And we'll just put you in accordance. And we've already ranked you where you are. But some schools will just say, if you have any additional information you want to add to your file, and that's really where you don't want to kind of, throw that aside as an opportunity, seize that opportunity and do everything you can to give yourself the best chances of admission and show how much you care about that school. I remember, again, when I use that example in law school, I was waitlisted at Columbia Law School. I wrote an additional letter of, I got the letter of recommendation. I also wrote a low-key. I visited the campus. I spoke with folks to give myself the best chances of admission. Needless to say, I wasn't accepted. Probably maybe I was really low ranked on the waitlist status. And Columbia law, not that you care about this, typically tends to waitlist a lot of folks to give themselves as much opportunity to kind of reach into that waitlist pile, pull folks out at their discretion. All right. So that's just something to kind of think about in terms of waitlist. We got some questions from Anna. So how much do you think I can improve my odds by writing a low key and demonstrating further interest? I think, again, if the school allows it, it will, I want to use the word like significantly improve, but it will make you feel comfortable that you've done everything you can in your power to really rise above the fray. And if you are ranked similarly with someone else and they didn't do anything and you did all of this, I don't know. If I was looking at the school, I'd be like, wow, they really care, and they'll push hard for you. And the second question she had is, how will being waitlisted impact my financial possibility? Great question. Great question, Anna. I think you're already like thinking really far ahead. There are schools that basically say, look, we're going to remove you off the wait list, but they wait till the bitter end. So you may not know that you got removed from the wait list until I remember another in law school, a friend of mine was admitted at UC Hastings, or I think it's called San Francisco Law now, or whatever, UC San Francisco, I don't care what it's called. And he literally was inbound driving to San Francisco with all his stuff. So we're talking probably like mid to end of July. And as he's driving, he gets an email from USC Law that says, hey, we just removed you off the wait list. And this is like end of July. School started maybe a week or two later. So it could go to the bitter end. And because it can go to the bitter end, maybe all financial aid possibilities have been exhausted. And the chances of you being able to negotiate, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is not high. So you may get admitted, but chances are you're not going to get a great financial aid package because you are kind of like a Hail Mary last minute candidate. So great question, Anna. Thank you for asking that. It is, there is a chance that it'll impact your financial aid for that school. But in his case, he was like, wow, I would so much rather stay in Southern California where he was from and go to a USC Law, which was, I think, ranked maybe 17th to Hastings 35, and go there and take that financial hit. Then go to Hastings. I don't know if he got any financial. He may have gotten a little bit from Hastings. It wasn't worth it. So something to definitely keep in mind. You'll get this information. Anna's question is really a great question, but you'll also get that answer in the guide. So make sure to get it. I'm just giving you a high level, not 50,000, maybe 30,000 foot view of these main topics as we have limited time, but you'll get a lot more information in the guidebook. All right, so after acceptance, you've got the unfortunate denial. And in denial, you're denied and it tends to be final and binding. Really, it does. I can't emphasize that enough. If you got denied, chances of you getting off trying to overturn a denial is really rare. When does it happen? If there's a gross error in your application, like let's say the admissions the admissions committee or the admissions office says, hey, we never got this letter of recommendation, or hey, we never got your transcript. We emailed you, you never got it. You never corrected it, and therefore we denied you. Then you're going to see, I never got the email, and you can show that. Or more likely, hey, I did submit the recommendation letter. Look at the receipt from LSAC, which shows it was submitted. And here's an attestation or affidavit from my recommender that says he submitted or she submitted it. So then they'd be like, oh, snaps, we looked, and yes, indeed, you did submit it. We overlooked it. They may then review your application ex post after the denial and may admit you. Chance of that happening is like 0.0%. It's really, really rare. So, and again, rarely does the school offer the student the opportunity to understand why they were denied. They will just deny you. They don't have the bandwidth to go through everybody that they've denied, could be thousands of people, and to provide them with information as to why they denied them. Now, if you did get denied and you feel that that was, no, if you get denied, you can obviously appeal, but again, chances you're going to get denied. And then if you did get denied, then what are your choices? You could go to another school that you applied to, especially if you diversified. We talked about that, reach, target, and safety schools. You could go to community college and transfer into the school of your choice. You have possibly a higher chance of doing that. A lot of people do it. It's a lot more cost effective. Or you could just transfer. So you go to one school that you may not have necessarily wanted to go. Maybe it's a low target or a safety school, and then transfer. I would say for me, when I applied to colleges, I got into a handful of colleges. My SAT was horrible, so I really didn't have many options. I went to UC Santa Barbara, and then I transferred to UCLA. You've got to be ranked pretty high in your class to be able to get transferred to another school, especially if it's a highly ranked school. So just kind of keep that in mind. But these are some alternatives. Go to community college, transfer, especially if it's a feeder school. Go to a four-year university and transfer, which is harder to do than transferring within community college. Because remember, community college ends with an associate degree typically, though that now I'm hearing that some community colleges are offering bachelor's degrees, which is wild. It's going to really upend how things are done in the education space. Or go to a four-year university where the university is saying, why should we accept somebody from another university where they can attain a degree versus a community college person who has no choice. And so therefore they tend to accept more from there. But some universities will accept from other universities, especially if you've done extremely well. Thankfully, I was able to do that. I was able to get into UCLA when I transferred. All right, so those are rejections. And then your final category is acceptance. Acceptance rates for Ivy League schools, 3 to 7%. Like what are the highest ranked schools? You've got Princeton, you've got Yale, you've got MIT, you've got Harvard, you've got Stanford. Those schools, Duke, those schools typically are between 3 and 5% chances of admission, while acceptance rates across the US largely follow rank, and they differ between 7% and 60%, which is why we talk about reach, target, safety schools. I talked about this at nauseum in the last webinar. We talked about that nauseum in the guidebook in the course. And again, you got the reach schools, which are 0 to 15% chance of admission. You've got the target schools, high and low targets. High targets are maybe 15 to 25% chance of admission. Low targets are going to be 25 to 40% chance of admission. And then you've got your safety schools, which are 40% to 80% chance of admission, or in this case, I said 60%, but whatever, up to 80% chance of admission, especially at the lower ranked schools. Typically, there's a correlation there. So you got accepted and you're running and you're like, woohoo. Now, if you got accepted ED, you got no choice, it's binding. If you got accepted EA, you can hold up and negotiate. You could basically better understand if that's the right school for you because it's non-binding. If you got accepted regular decision, again, you've got time and you can decide if you want to go to whatever school that accepted you. But again, remember, ED is binding, early decision. The others are not. So once you're admitted, I always recommend to our clients, do not readily accept. Let's sit back, get the acceptances from all the other schools. Typically, if you get accepted around March, April, you've got until about May to give your response. So that's anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks to give your response, right? I said up to 2 months, but typically it's like about 6, let's just say 8 weeks. If you got accepted early March, early action, or even regular decision, you would probably have until early May to give a response. The reason I say don't rush to accept is because you want to really kind of delve deep into those core factors, which we talked about in the other webinar and in the guidebook, that really allow you to better understand if that school is right for you. Factors such as the campus vibe, the academics, research opportunities, the professors, the concentrations, the majors, the minors, the location of the school, the career placement opportunities, and obviously the cost. And that's why you kind of want to think about like how, you want to make sure that you can negotiate your financial aid package so that you can get the best package, especially if you got accepted from a number of schools. So again, if you get accepted, don't rush to accept, wait a little bit, make sure you've done all your diligence so that you know that that school is the right school for you. And from a financial aid perspective, I think that's an important factor for you to consider. So that kind of sends us down. What kind of factors are you going to be thinking about in terms of deciding on schools? As I said, we talked about this previously. I'm bringing it up again. Academic fit, right concentration, major, minor, what are they famous for? What are the research opportunities, the kind of faculty, all that good stuff, right? Reputation, location, student support services, maybe the ranking of the school, where it's located. I'd rather be in New York, like Columbia or NYU, versus being out in Ithaca, going to Cornell. Things like that. Campus culture and vibe. How diverse is the school? What kind of environment does it have? Is it a school that kind of supports and elevates your ethnic community, and so on and so forth? That may be important to you because you're spending 4 years there and you're going to be an ambassador of that school later on. Financial aid and scholarships, which I'll talk a little bit about, talk a little bit more about in the final slide. But again, that's important, figuring out if they're going to give you any financial aid. The graduation and job placements. What kind of support are they going to give you, right? How many people graduate? And then the personal preference and priorities. Maybe you really want to be in a smaller school rather than a bigger school. Maybe you want to be in a school that you can commute to. Maybe you want to be in school on the other side of the country. Maybe you have certain priorities of the kind of school that you want to go to. Maybe it has a Greek system, maybe it has a good sports program, whatever it may be. You really want to dig into this. And this is really why you want to visit the campus if you can, especially if they do those kind of orientation days where you've been accepted, but you haven't accepted. And they can visit as a visiting student, as somebody who got accepted, so that you can get a better sense of it. I remember, again, I say law school because undergrad for me was a bazillion years ago, but law school, I remember a lot of folks would come to the campus, have several other offers, and then we'd have desks for different, or tables for different student organizations and so forth. And those students who got accepted at different schools would come by the different tables, speak to the students, and get the vibe of the campus, which is super important because it gives you a better sense of like, oh, I really kind of gel with this campus, or no, I don't. And in that case, at the time, they used to pay for our airline tickets and I believe our hotels. So they really kind of encouraged us to fly out, because them paying $1,500 for like the 100 students that got accepted that are kind of on the fence and haven't already accepted, why not? They're willing to do that to get those people to accept and not go to another school so that they can maintain their yields. All right. So definitely something to kind of consider when you're accepted. Go back through that list of things. And we talk about this again at length in the guidebook to kind of go back. So consult that so that you feel you have a better sense that you've made an informed decision as to why you are going to that school and not just kind of doing it as a Hail Mary. All right. The last thing I want to kind of talk about is kind of weighing your financial aid package. Some schools won't give you financial aid. And so what do? You want to look at it. So you've got a financial aid, you get accepted and you get your financial aid letter and says, hey, you're not getting any financial aid in terms of free aid. You're getting, X amount of subsidized loans, X amount of, unsubsidized loans, and the rest of it is on you. So and again, for an American, that comes from FAFSA, right? As an international, you're likely not going to get much aid, definitely not any federal aid. But now it's kind of up to you to get private, private loans, private scholarships from your home country, maybe even from the domestic country, your savings and so forth as an international. As an American, and you've got FAFSA, they may not have given you a lot of aid. So you can kind of go back and say, listen, I think, given these, and I'm giving some factors, medical bills, I took care of my parents, I had job loss, maybe as an undergraduate, divorce, death is not going to be a factor, but you can say my parents got divorced. I lost a lot of financial aid because of that, as in one of my parents now can't afford to help me, or both parents can't afford to help me, death in the parents. You can include additional documentation that can really showcase that there was a change in your financial aid situation. And that may help you get some need-based aid. Now, that's just one factor. The other thing you want to kind of think about is negotiating if you got aid. So I just told you about aid that you would get if you didn't get a lot of um, scholarships, but you just got certain maybe need-based aid, but that's really low or none at all, and you just got a bunch of loans. Then you can kind of say, listen, my situation has changed. I believe FAFSA wasn't didn't accurately reflect my financial situation. This is a lot of debt. Is there any way that you can help? And why not try? Worst case, they say no. The other thing is if you do get some financial aid from the school, need-based or merit-based, you can kind of go back and say, listen, UCLA gave me $10,000, USC gave me nothing. USC, I really want to go to your school. UCLA gave me X. Can you match it? They may match it. You go back to UCLA and say, listen, this school has given me $10,000. Can you beat it? And they say, okay, we can give you 15. You go back to USC and say, listen, these guys match the scholarship you guys gave and then some. Is there a way that you can match theirs or give me more? Especially, I need a living stipend or whatever. And they may say, fine, we'll give you 20K and that's it. Right? So push the envelope, try it. What's the worst case? They're not going to retract your admission simply because you're trying to do that. But you want to get schools that are somewhat equally ranked, because if you get them where you went into like a state school that gave you like 20,000, and then you go to another school that's very highly ranked, and they say, okay, this state school is ranked 60th and we're ranked 10th, we're not going to match that. You just come to us because we're better ranked. So just something to kind of think about. There's an art to this. We talk about this in the guidebook. So you make sure you do it. Always better to ask than not to ask, and then just kind of leave money potentially on the table. All right. Some schools will not negotiate financially, so also make sure to have backup calls just in case the negotiations fall through. In case, let's say, UCLA give you 10,000, you really don't want to go to UCLA. I don't know why you wouldn't. I'm brewing myself. But as I say, you don't want to go, so you want to have a couple of other options just in case that you would want to go through there. Or if you got, let's say, zero money at USC, zero money at UCLA, you tell UCLA, I also got into USC. I would go to your school, but can you do something to help me, like give me financial aid? And if they tell you no, and you got into these two schools, you want to have some backups, right? As I said, in case the negotiations fall through, just in case you don't want to go to USC, you want to go to UCLA, and you have some other schools there. So just something kind of think about from that perspective. But again, number one is if you don't feel that you were given a fair shot at need-based financial aid and all you got was loans, maybe say, hey, there's something that changed. FAFSA didn't pick it up, and therefore we feel that for these reasons, please give us some need-based aid. If you got need-based aid and or merit-based aid and you want to negotiate it, or you didn't get any but you got really two good options, then you can try to negotiate one school off the other and give it a shot and see what happens. All right. So that's pretty much it there. Let me quickly give you guys a timeline to the finish line. You evaluate your acceptances. You submit any follow-up materials to, if you were waitlisted or anything like that, especially if you got waitlisted kind of later on, send in those follow-up materials. Submit any final financial aid forms. We talked about some of those. Definitely look into housing. Once you've accepted with the school, you want to get all your ducks in a row, figure out housing and stuff, because you don't want to end up in the middle of nowhere, and then make your final college decision towards the end. So let me quickly tell you kind of who we are, so that you get a sense of kind of what we do. A lot of these guys have gone to incredible schools, Virginia, Stanford, Chicago, Princeton, Harvard, NYU, just incredible schools. These guys are ranked. These are my admissions experts. These guys have gone to the best schools out there, graduate top of their class, speak different languages, understand different perspectives. We're very diverse by just the nature of the company and kind of my own background as a diverse person myself. So we really kind of, I really loved recruiting folks that can understand people from different backgrounds and so forth. You can get the full background of my experts on the website. We've gotten to people in some top programs around the world, not just in the US, but also Canada, the UK, where I did my master's. So we really have deep expertise with a deep bench of experts that can help you get to where you want to go. Obviously, we talked about the College Admissions Mastery Guide. I wrote it. I'm really proud of it. I think it's going to really help you understand things in a way where you can kind of suss through all the crap that you get out there that may not necessarily be true, that AI may try to give you. This really is a tried and tested guidebook that really helps you along the way, especially if you can't work with us or other admissions experts. We try to democratize the process by giving you access to this very low cost tool that I think can really help you. And we're willing to give it to you at 25% less if you contact us within the next 24 hours. You've got our contact details there. My colleague posted it also in the chat group, righttrackadmissions.com or info@righttrackadmissions. You got our telephone number. We look forward to helping you get on the right track to success. Thank you guys for listening, and best of luck on your college admissions process.